Okay, so we are now recording and we're off. So thanks everyone for coming to this inaugural call. Hopefully you'll find it worth the 30 minutes of your time, and you'll come back for subsequent calls we have coming that I have planned for the rest of this year. My name is Kevin Sullivan. By title, I'm an Azure Stack Global Black Belt. Today I focus specifically, as the title implies, on Azure Stack primarily, although moving forward, we've got a lot of things that have come out recently and a lot of things in the pipe which may expand my focus area a bit, which is all good things, and that's within this area we call Intelligent Edge. And so with that, I decided, my team and I decided, hey, wouldn't it be great if we put together a call? And I've done these types of things before in the past several years regarding, one second there, regarding, when it comes to fairly new things or brand new things, to kind of give a very ad hoc, informal way of collaborating with you, whether you're internal Microsoft, whether you're external Microsoft, or your partner, or a combination of all of that, a way in which you can collaborate more together. So that's the purpose of this call. And so today, what we have planned for you is a very short agenda. So a couple of things. So I'll start out most of these calls, or all of these calls, with a very, very quick overview and maybe some news you can use type thing, some very top of mind, quick news around Intelligent Edge. So we'll start that today with that. We'll spend most of the time on this call, as well as other calls, majority of this time on what I'll call a focus area. And so today we've got Tibur Radu from the product group, specifically to talk about Azure Stack and some of the work he and his team have been doing around some resources, as well as some migration resources, and well as some guidance on using Azure Stack specifically for what to do with those end of service, or those end of life Windows Server versions and SQL Server versions that you can't upgrade or you can't decommission just yet. And so perhaps using Azure Stack as a possibility to migrate that to for some extended security support, and maybe even to basically transform those over time as well. And then we'll have Q&A. And so I and folks that if they come in on my end, will man the Q&A as best we can over IM. And then perhaps if we have any time left over at the bottom of the hour, so again, we're within 30 minutes here, we will try to take those. We'll allow you to unmute, make sure, hopefully that won't get too crazy depending on the crowd. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. A couple of just real quick things. This is a 30-minute briefing. We will not, and we really cannot go over any NDA type of material or non-disclosure, or things that we haven't really vetted for public disclosure yet. So just keep that in mind. We will probably have to defer if some of those questions come to roadmap items that we're just not ready to talk specifically about. We are using regular teams today, and going forward, that's my plan. If this format doesn't work out because the crowds get too large or what have you, I'll change up the format dynamically. I'll make sure that you guys will be able to link to those easily. But I believe this is the best format for better collaboration, Q&A with IM, and even audio if we have time at the end. And again, we'll have time at I am recording now, and I intend to record these calls, and I've got a small channel set up at that link. So aka.ms/AIEB.channel will be where I will put all of the recordings as we go and conduct these throughout the year. Okay, so for those of you that are brand new to this, and again, I literally will go over this in 2 slides and 2 slides only, just to give you a very quick primer on what we mean by Intelligent Edge, and really Intelligent Edge, Intelligent Cloud. So I'm going to assume that most of you, if not all of you, understand we have this great thing called Azure and the Azure platform. It basically is the platform in our overall general cloud solution. Anytime you see Azure followed by something, it is this consistent Azure public cloud platform. Our edge solutions, as this slide is trying to imply, is essentially to basically give you the consistency and all of the greatness that Azure is, whether for deploying applications, managing devices, whether they're in the cloud, or they're hybrid or they're on-prem, to bring that consistency down at the edge. And so what we mean by edge is we have things such as Azure Sphere for microcontrollers, a couple other ancillary things such as HoloLens, drone technologies, essentially things that are in IoT space. We have things like IoT Hub and ways to manage and secure those so that you can take more efficient use of that. And then up the stack, we have things like, and then specifically today, Azure DataBox Edge, and what the focus area today will be covering, that is Azure Stack. And so when we look at it more technically, if you will, the basis of a lot of these calls, and not the only thing we'll talk about, but a lot of the things we'll focus on is really in this, if you look at the slide, the purple area, in this integrated platform perspective. And so today, we have two very powerful solutions. One is Azure Stack, which has been around a little bit over a year or so, which provides us the ability to bring that Azure platform, literally bring that Azure platform down to an on-premises environment, such as your data center, maybe even to a field, think oil rigs or a field full of IoT devices or warehouses, those types of things, or even to the back of a truck. And then we also have DataBox Edge, which essentially is a way in which we can bring not only data movement, but also compute, which is, again, controlled and managed and consistent with our Azure platform up into the public cloud regions. And so as we go through the topic today, and as we go through the topics for the subsequent calls, I predict we will have a lot of the focus area will be mainly in that purple part, but also adding things as we go as well. So again, our Edge platform, from what Microsoft calls Edge, is really all about being consistent and in line, if you will, with what we have with our Azure public cloud platform that you can find in Azure Public, Azure Government, etc. Okay. I lied, one more slide on news before I hand it over to Tibby for the remainder of the call. Just a couple of things to point out, and I'll find a way to also provide this deck as well as the recording. I'll try to. I think I can put that on the channel I've got out there, so we'll stay tuned. But just a couple of quick news, some links. Azure Stack Update 1905 is released. If you look at it, there's a couple amongst the other things in the release notes. The big things are we now have a way to incorporate those firmware updates from our OEMs. So the OEMs now have the ability to consolidate and not have to have this separate patch and update process for their hardware. They can now put that in line with our patch and update service. So that's a good thing. And we've also released and syndicated images for 2019. So Azure Stack VMs can now run the latest Windows Server OS inside Azure Stack VMs from a pay-as-you-go and as a bring your own license model, etc. The last couple things up here, again, DataBox Edge is relatively new, but in March we went general availability. I just wanted to kind of point that out for our first call here. And then the one in the middle, and Tibby will talk probably in more length about it during this particular call, but part 10 of this awesome series that's being called the Azure Stack IaaS blog series was released a few days ago. So the link is there for that, but I encourage you to check that out, and I think Tibby will give you even more reason to do that as he goes through his material today. And with that, I'll hand it over. You ready?
Thank
Tibby?
you. Yep.
All right.
Thank you. So my name is Tiberiu Radu. I'm a PM on the Azure Stack team. My focus is on IaaS management, migrations, and the CSP world. And as part of these migrations, we started discussing about the end of support, let's call them movements, if you want. So SQL Server 08 and Windows Server 08 are planned for the end of support in July this year, respectively in January next year. There is a lot of interest in this, and there's been a number of customers reaching out from various verticals and such to that have workloads which need to be protected during these couple of years. So the end of support means There's no more updates coming out, and unless you are either paying or you do something with those workloads. There are a number of questions which were asked around this, and there's a lot of variations to this program. And if you look down here at the AKMS link, this will take you to a oh, not here. This will take you to an FAQ which has a number of questions and answers around the program itself. Um, this FAQ is a bit hard to navigate. There's a lot of questions and there's a lot of variations to this, but it has a lot of information, and this would be more or less the source of truth for you moving forward. So EOS means SQL Server you will need to either migrate your workloads or you will need to upgrade your databases, right? So EOS extends a 3-year period for. Let me jump through these. So these are SQL and Windows, and this is the part which makes more sense. Um, Essentially, you will need to either upgrade your current environments or you will need to move those workloads to Azure, or whenever there's a regulatory or there's a compliance or security or whatever the reason is, Azure Stack. If you cannot do either of these, then you will need to buy what is called a custom support agreement, an ESU. It would get you access to these extended security updates. You can buy these for 3 years. There are certain rules you need to abide by. Whenever you buy during the year, you're going to pay for the whole year and that sort of thing. Those are all in the FAQ, by the way. So based on wherever you are, you will go to one of these. Now, assuming you don't want to buy the extended support, which is the most expensive option, and you don't move, you cannot move those workloads to Azure either, which would be more or less the cheapest option. Somewhere in between, there's an option for you to use Azure Stack as a platform for these workloads. Now, we need to be very clear in terms of what that means, because Azure Stack is not a virtualization platform. It's not a place where you would drop a VM and you would just forget about it and everything would just run. The EOS program essentially buys you an additional 3 years to do something with that application, either modernize it or move it to a PaaS environment, or whatever the path is for you. So Azure Stack is a step in that journey, and we wanted to highlight this with the blog series which Kevin mentioned earlier. This blog series talks about the benefits of Azure Stack as an IaaS platform. Goes through, and by the way, we will have these. I think we're sharing the deck, so you'll have all the links in here. But we are okay, perfect. So all these are links, and they point out to the blog series itself. The blog series essentially covers these points in here, and these are all benefits you would get from running a VM inside Azure Stack. From something as simple as resetting a password, all the way to creating complex NSG rules, network security group rules, or templatizing your deployments to create an infrastructure as code environment, right? So you would either deploy your production and your test environments with the same templates and gain consistency across both of them. But this is not a, one-click thing, migrate. So this needs to be part of a journey and needs to be part of a process. So to help you with that, we've put together a number of documents which are specifically targeted to EOS, but essentially they can be used for pretty much any migrations. These documents we are planning to evolve as time goes by, and right now they've been shared with a few of you. I'm happy to share these more broadly. You just send a ping to this alias and we will share them with you. In the second version of these documents, I think we're going to have them shared out broadly. But right now, they are in a sort of a draft V1 state. So these documents talk about how you would build a migration practice itself. The main document in here is this one, which first starts with a number of links to the playbooks and to the migration playbooks, which are the ones for Azure, and then goes on to giving out training resources, how you would actually ramp up on what Azure Stack is, how you would manage it, how you would do operations around Azure Stack, and then it digs deeper into an actual migration and has things like topics in scope, like discussion guides, what you will need to check with to identify with your customer or inside your organization before you can actually move those workloads. And then has desired outcomes and useful links, things you will need to learn before you can actually have these discussions. And it goes on through each of these phases up to the modernization piece, which sort of links back to the blog series. And it has this, you see this picture again with all the benefits of running a VM, an Azure VM on Azure Stack, and then talks about decommission and such. The last one is around the migration tools, but I'll show you this in a second. So this document, the migration patterns. There are a couple of other ones around how you would actually migrate a SQL workload, and we give out examples and list out the tools you can actually use. One thing to note here, for example, if you look at the database migration guide, which you can find in Azure, right? This is an Azure set of documents which you would use in order to move a SQL workload inside an Azure VM. There's a note in here which says, if you have any regulatory policy or compliance requirements, you should use Azure Stack for these. And by the way, the guidance in this set of documents pretty much applies to Azure Stack as well. The reason behind that is there are a lot of similarities between Azure and Azure Stack. There are some caveats to Azure Stack, and you need to be careful about some things, but that is part of the planning phase, and that should be part of your testing matrix as well. The other document in here has a process to build a performance testing bench line. So we've actually ran these things inside. So Joel and Megan helped us build a let's call it a performance baseline for running a SQL workload inside an Azure Stack VM. And while exactly these results do not apply to all the deployments, because each Azure Stack might have certain things which are particular to your deployment, this document would help you build that benchmarking mechanism and give you the tools to actually test this for yourself. Of course, it includes the results as well, and it has all the things we found in our deployment. This is an older stamp, so the results might not be the best out there, but at least it's a starting point for you. So let me go back here. And then the set of documents also includes things like a Veeam guide and a Commvault solution guide. The reason behind that is in Azure Stack, whenever you talk about migrations, you would need the actual tools to migrate, right? So we are relying today on several partner solutions to complete this migration. These are in the blog series. In the second part, you'll find the migration process itself, and we list these solutions here. We actually need to update this list with Veeam as well, as Veeam also has a solution which can target Azure Stack. And then Zero Down, for example, this is not exactly a migration partner. This is a solution which provides high availability at the application layer. So if you have an application which doesn't know anything about high availability, you would put zero down in front of it, and then you would gain that high availability. In this blog series, in this blog post, we have links to all these solutions, and then there are even links to demos and to videos which talk about them. For example, the cloud-based one, which I cannot see in here. Oh, this one. Cloud-based actually has a solution called Coriolis. Coriolis is able to integrate with Azure Migrate. So Azure Migrate would do the assessment, and then Coriolis would take that assessment, feed it into its own internal tooling, and then migrate those resources across. So you can have any sort of mix and match with these. It will all depend on your planning and on your overall migration plan. uh, the planning phase is really very important, and it's critical to the entire process, especially as these are older applications. So in the context of Windows Server 08 and SQL 08, these are not exactly cloud-based applications. So testing them and creating a end-to-end planning document, planning, I don't know, pattern would help you make sure that there's no issues when moving those workloads. Because again, Azure Stack is not a just a virtualization platform. It is an IaaS platform, and there are a lot of differences between a traditional virtualization VM and an IaaS VM or an Azure VM. Azure Stack runs Azure VMs and takes on all the benefits as well as all the limitations which come with that. So these are all explained in these documents. The next iteration of the this IP kit, if you want, will include more things specific to the limitations and to the things you should consider when you're doing this planning. But as I was mentioning in the beginning, this always needs to be part of a broader migration journey, and the migration needs to be part of a broader modernization story, be that a application modernization or just an operations modernization where you're moving your VMs and then adding whatever management, hybrid management, for example, you would put on top. If you'd use things like Azure Update Management, for example, and this is a solution from Azure, it would link into your Azure Stack VMs, and then you would enable things like Azure Monitor or Update Management, change tracking, and so on. This would enable you to essentially run all your, to manage all your VMs across Azure and Azure Stack from one place. I think I've covered all of it, and in less time than you've mentioned, Kevin.
All right. Thanks, Tibby.
Thank you.
So I'm getting a little echo there. Hold on a second. Oh, now it's away. Great. Thanks, Tibby. Yeah, in my experience, again, the Azure Stack, for those of you not familiar with it, it really is really there to solve really kind of two key things. One is typically when it comes to, hey, I have an offline scenario or it's a law of physics problem, right? But I want to modernize that solution where I've got very little to no connectivity, or the connectivity I have just doesn't work. So that's number one. Number two is around data sovereignty. And what we found is, especially in the last couple of months, is like, well, this end of support thing is sometimes our legacies, and especially our legacy virtual machines, for whatever the reason, I can't upgrade these. I can't make them go away. And yet I can't bring them to public cloud. And there's many, many reasons for that. So Azure Stack does provide you a good alternative to get that extended support and remain them on premise, and at the same time you get the value of starting the journey on modernizing those, because as Tibby said, it's Azure Stack. This isn't virtualization. This is a cloud transformation. Even if it's the step one is to forklift and lift and shift that to an environment like Azure Stack, because Azure Stack is consistently the Azure platform on your premises. All right, so Tibby, can I allow you? Can you go ahead and just advance the slide versus me taking over? Just go to 15. So that's what we had planned for today. And again, if there's any questions, we've got a couple of minutes left. I can hang out here for a couple minutes, a little longer if you can. And Tibby, I don't know if I don't want to speak for you. If there's something very quick, or especially through the IM window, and you know, even if it's offline, I'm willing to get back to you and follow up with you. But I want to make sure we understand that the next I kind of lied. The next AIEB call won't be every other Friday. I believe this is the only break in the schedule I have planned for the rest of the calendar year. I looked at the calendar, and next every other Friday would have been July 5th. So I've decided not to have a call due to the U.S. holiday of July 4th. So I expected you all, as well as folks on our end, it would have been very hard to get people focused and into that call. So I've decided to skip over that. So our next call will be on July 19th. Topic to be determined. Again, we'll obviously focus on something in our intelligent edge solution set. But with that, I think that is all we had. Again, I'll have this posted as a recording. And like Tibby said, he's got some very valuable links here. So I will make sure I get a version of this deck somewhere on those AKMS links that I've shared in the meeting request, and hopefully you have that you can pull these down and reference and use. So you'll have those as well. And so with that, I'm going to go ahead and close out the call and stop the recording. Again, I will hang out here for another couple minutes, but with that, I will let everybody get to their weekend. Thanks for joining.